Thank you. 7 minutes after 11 o'clock, we have a short interview about a very, very cool observation, and I think Duncan White is correct, right on. He has figured out that it is the writers of the world that really influence the world more than the leaders. Duncan White has written a book called Cold Warriors, Writers Who Waged the Literary Cold War. Duncan himself is an award-winning journalist. He is the lead book reviewer for the Daily Telegraph. He's an academic and assistant director of studies in history and literature at Harvard. And this book says what I think is absolutely the truth. And it's important to pay attention to it because you realize that we're all influenced by the things we read, maybe more than we realize or than we admit. And that gives power to the writers. And you've heard it before. The pen is mightier than the sword, right?
Yeah.
Good morning, Duncan. It's an honor to have you on our show.
Oh, good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I don't mean to make this a silly opening comment, but I rode past a field full of cattle one day, and I thought, if I could just get them all to know, you can break out of that thing. That farmer can't deal with it if you all just group together. And it's kind of what writers have done all these years for us humans, haven't they?
Well, I mean, certainly books are this incredible, durable piece of technology that is the best system, I think, for delivering ideas, especially complex ideas, political ideas.
Yeah.
And in the Cold War, we saw this reach a pitch of intensity that it hadn't done in the history of literature and hasn't done since, when books really were used as weapons to try and penetrate the Iron Curtain and to persuade people to change their beliefs.
Is it individual or are some of the writers, because you cover some really classic well-known names, is Ernest Hemingway, for example, just doing it on his own, or are some of these writers actually kind of, I don't know if paid off by the government is the best way to ask that, but it's somehow in cahoots with a government, a world leader of some sort?
Oh, it's a great question, and there certainly were in the Cold War writers who cozied up to governments, who took government money, especially on the Soviet side. You had apparatchiks who would happily sell their pen for the privilege that the government could give them. Mm-hmm. But many of the writers were relatively unwitting. They were trying, writers often pride themselves on their autonomy, on their independence, and it was often that their work or their status was kind of manipulated and used by the intelligence services, say, in the cause of cultural propaganda.
Is there a way to gauge the power of a novel versus the power of something that is considered more of a like a journalistic piece?
Sure. I mean, that's a great point. I mean, what you're looking at, I think, with a novel is the power of story. An example I would give would be Animal Farm. So, Orwell went to the Spanish Civil War. He went to fight fascism, but he also saw the nasty side of Stalinism, the authoritarian side of Stalinism. But in writing about Spain in a kind of journalistic way, as you put it, he struggled to reach his readers. So he decided to write a satire of Stalinism, almost like a fairy tale in Animal Farm, and in transmuting it into that, into transforming that story into something that many people could read and become immersed in, he created a book that was a huge bestseller and had enormous influence about the way that people thought about communism during the Cold War.
And both female and male writers were targets.
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, in the Soviet Union, Anna Akhmatova was one of the big targets of the Stalin regime. They sought to silence her. They kidnapped her son and stuck him in the gulag. I mean, and in the West, one of the writers I focus on is Mary McCarthy, who was an American writer who was brash, didn't take no for an answer. She was a really powerful and influential figure who was both a critic of the Soviet Union and its policies, but also became a vocal critic of American conduct in the Vietnam War and reported from the front lines in in both South and North Vietnam, which took tremendous courage.
And I wonder how many moviegoers, when they went to see The Spy Who Came In From the Cold and the Gulag Archipelago, knew the history with those two writers.
Yeah, well, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold is such a great movie, but it's based on an equally great novel by John le Carré. And le Carré, whose real name is David Cornwell, was actually a spy working for MI6 at the time that the Berlin Wall went up. He was stationed in Bonn, and he was called in because people were panicking. They didn't know what was happening when the wall went up in Berlin. They worried that it presaged a serious conflict. And what he saw there, the anger he felt at seeing the hypocrisies of the Cold War, fed into The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, which became a best-selling book and a wonderful film.
There is, it's unquestionable that some of the authors who wrote some of these things are people of courage. But you would also be remiss if we didn't mention the publishers. I mean, especially back then. I mean, today you can have a self-published book, but it was unheard of. So the publishers had to be aware that they're putting their own lives on the line.
Absolutely, absolutely. What you even had in the Soviet Union was a kind of publishing industry that was underground, unofficial, what they called samizdat, where people would print out and bind copies and circulate them of these banned books. I mean, and they took huge risks in doing so. And then there were the publishers that helped writers smuggle their manuscripts out, taking tremendous risks in the process. So yes, you're absolutely right. This was bringing out a book is a collaborative operation, and the publishers played a big role.
And then you've got Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who, by that particular time, there was more media coverage, and it was right on the verge of social media, of the computers.
Yeah, well, he became a celebrity, Solzhenitsyn, when he was deported in 1974. You know, he was pursued by hundreds of TV crews as he just wanted to go try and get some peace and quiet. But he'd written a book, The Gulag Archipelago, which, you know, he described as having more power than an atomic bomb, because it told the truth of the Gulag, the labor camp system that really shook a lot of people's faith in communism around the world.
The book covers the novels and also covers the poetry. Does it include poetry that surfaces in the form of songs?
Well, I mean, there's a very interesting episode at the end of the book about a rock group called the Plastic People of the Universe. They were a Czechoslovak rock group that were very indebted to Frank Zappa and Velvet Underground and these kind of American bands of the 60s and 70s. And they got banned by the government. And that banning, that trial that was staged to prosecute them, became the beginning of what was known as the Velvet Revolution, led by Václav Havel, a playwright who then became the first head of state in a post-communist Czechoslovakia. So often these writers, singers, musicians moved in the same circles and influenced each other in fascinating ways. Wow,
this is an awesome book. I appreciate you taking some time to talk to us about this. You put a lot of work into this. I have a copy of the book. It is huge, 700-something pages. It's called Cold Warriors. I know that this listening audience is going to love this. Maybe even some titles you never even thought of as having an effect politically on the minds of all of us. But the book does describe all of them. If you want the book that Duncan White wrote, you can call me right now. I'll leave it for somebody. I'm going to buy it myself. I found it on Amazon, so I'm going to get my own copy. It's #1 right now, by the way, on Amazon. Do you have a website you want to direct us to?
Well, you can follow me and interact with me on Twitter. I'm at DWhiteBooks on Twitter. As you point out, the book is available from independent bookstores, all good bookstores, and of course Amazon.
And thank you for pointing out the importance of the pen, Duncan White. Thank you for being on the show as well.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And one of our favorite publishers, HarperCollins. Look at that. I always forget who's publishing what. Okay, we'll be right back. Thank you, Duncan.
medical providers are special. And to look special, they go to Scrub Paradise in Ocala. Located off Easy Street next to Shoe Carnival, Scrub Paradise has a wide selection of top brand scrubs, medical shoes, and accessories. Embroidery is also available. Don't settle for the same boring scrubs. Visit Scrub Paradise today or call 352-873-4368. Your favorite brands are on sale. 352-873-4368. That number again is 352-873-4368.
It's time for the 37th annual Ocala Shrine Rodeo. Thursday, August 29th. Don't miss Bullfighters Only, the baddest animals on the planet. Rodeo action Friday and Saturday, August 30th and 31st, 7:30 nightly at the